What's happening? It is 7 p.m. Tuesday night, March 4th. Having a pretty good day here. We're going to break down some thoughts on the Arnold Classic 2025. Pretty good strongman show. I really enjoyed it overall. Going to give you some thoughts, just a little rundown of a few things that I noticed, enjoyed, liked, didn't like, and that's that. So, as you know, Arnold Classic is considered one of the big four shows in strongman. So we have at the beginning of the year we have the Arnold, which just happened. In a couple months, in May, we'll have the World's Strongest Man. In August, we'll have the Strongest Man on Earth at the Shaw Classic, and then we'll have the Rogue Invitational, which will be back in Scotland this year. Now, the Arnold is pretty cool because it's regarded as the heaviest of these shows. And I love it. I think in strongman, you are supposed to have kind of different ends of the spectrum. So we go from the Arnold, which is a heavier show, into World's Strongest Man, which is actually the lightest of these shows. There's a lot more moving events that happen in that. And it's generally just not anything you're going to see a max at. That does happen sometimes, but overall, over the course of the entire event, when we're looking at the Arnold, you had a max deadlift, you had a max jerk. That frame carry is pretty heavy, and it's just a more challenging show overall, where even when you have a stone to shoulder event at the very end, the best guys were only getting 4, right? So pretty high level stuff. It's also cool that these guys bulk into it and definitely upcycle as they're going in. They get heavier. So when we're seeing somebody like Hafthor Bjornsson, who can easily put on a ton of mass onto his frame, I shouldn't say easily, but he has the ability to, they come in like absolute units. So why don't we just kind of break down event by event? I'll give you kind of my thoughts and feelings on different things. First off, of course, the max deadlift was super cool. The big story going into this was, is Hafthor going to pull 501? Now, he did not, of course, spoiler alert, but you have to give him a hand for going for it. But hey, man, Thor's still one of the greatest deadlifters of all time, maybe the best, depending on who you ask. So really impressive. It actually makes it takes away from the fact that he won this event so handily. It was, what, 1,026 deadlift? That's pretty crazy. On the women's side, which was really interesting, we ended up having 7 women deadlift over 600 pounds. I remember a few years ago, probably 2016, I think it was Kristen Rhodes deadlifted 600, and she was one of the only women on the entire planet that could do that. So now you have Lucy Underdown, who just cracked into 7 women deadlift over 600 pounds. So pretty incredible. Now, one thing that happened during the deadlift that I found particularly interesting was after Mitch Hooper did his second lift, he came and jumped on the mic real quick, and he said, "Hey, I'm going to forego my third attempt." Thor had it in the bag kind of either way, one way or another. But he came out and said, like, "Hey, let's all get behind Thor. We all want to see this happen. So I'm just skipping my third attempt. Let's get behind him and make it happen." And I think that was cool in a different way than most people think. I actually think that was a little bit of gamesmanship to put some pressure on him to have to go for it. Because Thor was even talking about, well, hey, maybe depending on how I'm feeling, I might not go for it at all if I'm going to win and maybe save some energy and secure some pretty big points for the rest of the competition. So that was a sly move on Mitch Hooper, and I think it was intentional to make Thor go out there and do that, even if he was thinking otherwise, so that Thor would lose some steam, lose some energy. But you have to hand it to Mitch Hooper. That wasn't a dick move. It was just good strategy on that. And how about Mitch Hooper? What did he finish with? 990 or something? I mean, the guy's just incredible at everything. I don't see him losing anytime soon. He is on a nut streak. I believe it's like 26 or 30 straight events in competitions where he's finished top 3. And the only event he's really lost in the last 3 years was the World's Strongest Man against Tom Stoltman last year, where the only reason Hooper lost is because he tore the crap out of his hand on one of the carry medleys right out the gate. So that's something else. Just pretty incredible. While we're on the subject of Tom Stoltman, I mean this in no way of disrespect, but wow, his stock is going down very, very, very big. Despite the fact that he's a three-time world's strongest man, despite the fact that he's a world's strongest man champion three times over, wow, he cannot put it together outside of that competition. Now, if you didn't know, maybe you do know, there was a leaked recording a couple years ago of Colin Bryce and the Stolman brothers and Colin, I think it was Darren Sadler actually, but they were alluding to the fact that if the Stoltmans showed up to some of these Giants live events, they would give them favorable placings and positionings in groups. So that's questionable, and that was supposed to be some big drop. The guy that used to run World's Ultimate Strongman, Mark Boyd, leaked that, and he was supposed to be a big dunk. So World's Ultimate Strongman was trying to position themselves near the top for these elite competitions, and they were trying to slam World's Strongest Man with that. But what ended up happening is that actually just kind of made Mark Boyd and World's Ultimate Strongman look like petty dicks, and nothing came of that. World's Ultimate Strongman folded a year later. I actually worked with them briefly in 2020, and it didn't go very well for me, but that's besides the point. Anyways, Tom Stolman cannot get it together outside of the World's Strongest Man. Now, that competition format suits him very well. He's very long-armed. There's always events like stones in there, and there's always lighter moving events. But when it comes to maximal lifts and heavier things, he just cannot put it together. So will be interesting to see where it puts him down the line when people want to talk about who's the best, this or that. Stoltman is definitively out of the question, in my opinion. And not calling him overrated. It's just the guy can't win anything else. He has no Giants live wins outside of, maybe Scotland's Strongest Man or something, which doesn't really count. Let's talk into somebody who I think is overrated. And I don't mean this to be harsh or anything, but man, Bobby Thompson cannot complete a competition healthy. It's at this point to where we have so many good top tier strongmen, and shows like the Arnold, the Rogue Invitational are invite only shows. And I think that it's taking a spot away from some very deserving people to just keep inviting somebody based on their name who can't even complete the show healthy. I mean, I really wonder when the last time he completed an entire show was. The guy's obviously brutally strong, has the American log press record, but it's another underperformance after underperformance. And think about who some of the newer guys were this year in the Arnold. You had Nick Gardione, who won the Arnold Amateur last year. He won OSG, and he did very, very well in this competition. Austin Andrade, first time to World's Strongest Man, great performance. Lucas Hatton, first time to the Arnold Strongman, got second. So that just shows you that there's some of these young guns who are on the way up that are gunning for these top spots, and I think we should be giving it to people that are pretty healthy. On the subject of health, man, what a bummer it is that Trey Mitchell can't grab anything. So he has nerve damage in his hands. And if you watched, he plays very well on everything. And he ended up with some crazy number, like a 5'10", 5'20" behind the neck push press. While a lot of these guys were jerking, he just used his absolute brute strength to power that thing up behind him. He was close on the deadlifts. He was close on the press off the blocks. But man, that guy's awesome. If you can ever get that hand fixed, he is, I think, a shoe-in to win some of these big titles. He did win the Shaw Classic twice. So, as we got a comment here from ZT, the Mountaineer, man, Evan Singleton. So, on the opposite of Bobby Thompson, Evan Singleton does stay healthy and always finishes pretty well. And it's just a bummer, in my opinion, because that guy has all the tools necessary in order to be the champion. Mitch Hooper has even said on record his biggest competition is Evan Singleton. But, man, the guy cannot get his head out of his butt, dude. It's really, unfortunate. And I'm not trying to, really criticize. I just hope that he can get it together. I just don't think that crazy hype situation is feeding him. He needs to choose a different avenue and a different outlet, but that's so tied in with his identity and, who he thinks he is, that I don't know if he can escape from that. But hey, to each their own, right? How cool was the jerk event? That was Unbelievable. What a very, very cool way to do a max overhead event in a different format. I don't think we've ever seen that in the Arnold. They did the Flintstone bar press a couple years ago in World's Strongest Man, which Alexei Novikov won. Speaking about guys that can't stay healthy, unfortunately, man, I wish the best for that guy. I loved watching him compete when he was still in it. But man, you had many, many guys pressing over 500 pounds. Like, that's just absolutely incredible. Um, it's really like it just can't even really put it into words. I mean, most people have no idea what it's like to like pick a 500-pound yoke off the ground or do anything with 500 pounds, let alone press it overhead with control and lock it out. That's just absolute madness. Maxine, unfortunately, he tore his bicep straight off the bone, man. Big roll up on that frame carry. Here's another thing on the frame carry that I found interesting is, well, why don't we look this from the global perspective? There's a couple of rules in there and ways that judging was interpreted that I thought was rather questionable. So we have this situation on the frame carry where you could not drag the frame across the line, but it just feels sort of subjective because a lot of these guys were dropping the frame early and the momentum of it was throwing past the line like Mitch Hooper. Nothing against him because he's kind of taking advantage of the way it's getting judged. But then you had people like Austin Andrade who they say were dragging it across the line and then they wasted points and they lost time and lost valuable placing positions because the judge said they had to pick it up and go back up and take it further over the line. Absolutely insane. You know what? I'm gonna keep going here for a few minutes, but I really have a lot of thoughts on this that I need to kind of get a little deeper and hash out. But that frame carry was nonsense. I don't know if you guys saw Rebecca Roberts got a do-over because apparently she came out and had liquid chalk on her hands, which was explicitly disallowed in the rules. And what they did is they backfilled her to the end to go again, and then she ended up winning that event. I have no idea why on earth they would ever do that. They should have just DQ'd her on the spot. That's somebody who's competed at the highest level several times over and over and over again. It's just not acceptable. It's one of the biggest pro shows of the year. It's probably the biggest women's strongman competition on the planet. And for them to give her a do-over and nobody else, and she won that event, like that's really ridiculous. That would have really significantly changed the placings at the end of the day. So I don't know what there is to say about that. The other things I really highly disagreed with were, man, the stone to shoulder. You had to drop it onto the pad in order for the rep to count. So you could do all the work, get it to the shoulder, good, down. And if you just dropped it, but it landed on the rubber mats under you and you did not successfully get it to the crash pad, then the rep wasn't given. So there's another thing that happened more so on the women's side where a lot of people did not get the points that they deserved because they didn't get it on the pad. And now I forget who it was, but somebody got their stone up to their shoulder and they just sort of tossed it in and chucked it off, and it looked like it just nipped the edge of the crash pad, and they still got a good rep. That's just absolute nonsense. So I'm going to need to get some clips of this and come back for it because now that I'm going and thinking about it, a lot of crazy stuff. I just don't know why at the highest show that they don't. I just don't understand like where the thoughts are coming from some of these judges. First off, once again, Magnus ver Magnuson is the worst judge of all time. There's way too many things that go screwy with him when he's judging for me to think otherwise. Of course, respect because the guy's been around and is a four-time champion. He's a phenomenal athlete. He's a phenomenal ambassador for the sport. But like, how many times is that guy going to be involved with shit where it goes really questionable? It's unbelievable. Let's not even get started on that double dipping rule. I don't even know where that came from, but that flat out cost Thor another World's Strongest Man title. Say whatever you want about Eddie Hall. It's nothing against him. I mean, he's still fair and square. Maybe not fair and square, but he still deserves that title because that's how it played out. But what in the world, man? That was actually a Colin Bryce decision when that was happening. He was the judge at that point in time, which is a little crazy. gotta be careful. I mean, I know I'm not talking like a huge audience, but I still want to just like don't like shout my opinions on like what's BS and what's not in strongman. But I'm of the opinion, especially since I run shows, that I really shouldn't be making any decisions that are very impactful in a judging capacity. So sometimes I've jumped in to judge at some of my shows. So I'll give you the example of the sandbag carry and shoulder medley that we did last year, but that was so cut and dry that I wasn't going to have to like make some crucial decision that was going to jump somebody from winning World's Strongest Man to not winning, right? Um, just kind of crazy. So I don't know. A lot of thoughts on the Arnold. It was a great show overall, though. It was really one of the most exciting things that I've seen in a long time in strongman, top to bottom. The jerk event was honestly one of the coolest things I've ever watched because it was just astounding to see those guys just press, 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 press. Um, guys, I appreciate you all jumping in on here tonight. I'm gonna have to cut this one short a little bit tonight, but I'm gonna come back next Tuesday with a lot more, and I'm also gonna post a little more full long form video with some of my thoughts kind of reared in and a little more centered on this because I really, now that I got into it, I kind of got a lot to say about it. And I want to take the time to break this down and analyze a little more thoroughly. But I do want to give a shout out on the Ellison Fitness Innovations channel coming up at 8 Eastern, 7 Central. There was kind of a big controversy that was surrounding the Arnold Amateur, and one of the athletes that was in there in the open division, Trey Godbold, who is a bit of a loudmouth and brash individual himself, is going to be breaking all that down. Long story short, it ran pretty horribly, but I don't have all the details. I tend to be pretty forgiving sometimes in some instances, but they completely nixed one of the events that they were really touting. It was supposed to be a rope hoist where you're pulling an object vertically from a rope, nixed it for an actual clean and press, something completely different. The Opens didn't even get to do all of their prelims events. So very messy. Anyways, keeping it short and brief tonight, guys. Thanks for jumping in. We'll be back every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Next week's going to be a little bit better. I'm going to have some awesome stuff for you. Lots of big news coming up that I can't quite announce yet, both for me and the Strongman Club, clubstrongman.com. So that's it for tonight, guys. Short and sweet. Hope you all are doing well. Eat big, train hard, get strong.